Fa una canzone senza note nere, fa una canzone senza note nere, sembra masti la mia grazia avere, balla d'un tuono che invita a dormire, dolcemente facendola finire, balla d'un tuono che invita a dormire, dolcemente facendola finire. Sing me a song without a note of sadness, sing me a song without a note of sadness, when all the pain of love drives me to madness. Sing me to sleep with a sweet serenading, ah, so gently from sound to silence fading. Sing me to sleep with a sweet serenading, ah, so gently from sound to silence fading.
Hello. Welcome to the Renaissance Experience. Here on Dial a Teacher tonight, we're going to try to introduce you to the Renaissance period, and we have as our special guests some very special people. My name is Dimit Keith, and tonight I have with us His Majesty, King Henry VIII, and his Queen, Anne Boleyn. How do you do, Your Majesty?
I do very well, thank you.
We're delighted to have you here, but I can't understand how you got here in the 20th century and what you think of it.
Well, I don't quite understand it entirely myself. You see, we've engaged a new wizard in London, at the castle there, and he was going to make a youth potion that would cause me to be young forever, he said. It had something to deal with time. And he added one thing to another, some newt's eyes to something, and a great puff of smoke, and suddenly we weren't there, but here, in the New World. In the New World that was discovered by that Spaniard fellow. What is it you call this place? Florida.
That's right.
So here we are, and it's not merry old England anymore. Queen Anne Boleyn and I are here. It's quite amazing, this place.
We've been here for approximately a week and find it very fascinating. Everything here is quite different than the way we have experienced it in our time, of course.
We're honored to have you here, and we have this opportunity now to ask you something about your time. First of all, Your Majesty.
Yes.
What all are you king of?
Well, I would like to be king of everything, but one thing at a time. England, of course, is that to which I was given kingship of by birth. You see, one doesn't become king by election. We don't have ballots here. We don't have people who go in and vote. You become king because your father was king, and he was king because his father was king, and so on back down the line. So I am king by inheritance of England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. Although the Scotch and the Welsh are somewhat at odds with this, so we shall bring them round to see our way. And then, of course, there is that little bit of Brittany, part of France, which is called Calais, of which I am also king as well. My good friend across the river, Francois Premier, Francis I, King of France. So we have some difference of opinion over that. But England, always England, am I king of.
Delightful. Now, this period from which you have arrived here in the 20th century, we now call the Renaissance period. I know that you, this was a period in which a lot of interesting things were happening. Tell us something about the exciting times.
And is this not clever? What a clever word that is. You have called this period Renaissance. This is from the French, is it not?
Yes,
You
it is.
speak French, how clever of you. It is. It means rebirth, I do believe. Well, that is a very good thing, for now, in England, there is a rebirth of music and culture and language and art, sculpture, dance, all the finest things which, if you might say, put a frosting on the cake of life.
Well, you see, it was Plutarch who went back and started discovering some of the old Greek texts. And they said, my goodness, this information is very important to us now. And so we started disseminating this information to everyone that we possibly could. And of course, now it's very vogue for women to have an education. I think that's most excellent.
Is that all women?
Women not only have an education, but they also may have their own business, they have their own shops. It's quite the day now.
Sounds something like women's liberation of today, but was this available for all women?
Oh, well, of course, the women who had the monies to do such. I was not born royalty myself. My father was a merchant, and he was able to buy quite a fine castle and quite fine clothing, and he became interested by Henry and came into his court, sent me off to France to learn the proper manners of the court, and thereby Henry did see me and did take me for his wife.
So did I.
And so I am educated.
Your Majesty,
Yes,
King Henry, I noticed that you sang a song in Italian.
of course.
How many languages do you speak?
For myself, well, Italian, French, of course, and English, and some Latin, and Greek, and Spanish, that Spanish which I need to know to get along with the Spaniards. We are at war with them currently, and you need to negotiate with them bit by bit, and it's good to know their language. So what is that measure now? 6 languages, I think? It was my good fortune in my youth, to be schooled, for I was never intended to be king. It was my brother Arthur, who, by God's will, passed from this earth at youth, put me in his place, and I became king. So not everyone has opportunity to learn as many languages as I have, or even as Queen Anne has, for only the sons of nobles or of the royal family have opportunity to study language or to go to school at all.
Are you saying that the children of your nation do not go to school unless they have a lot of money?
Of course not. Dear me, who would grow the food? The children are working in the fields. Yes, learning to plow a straight furrow. Or more often than not, going to school, you see, is not really necessary. Because if it is, the social order is such that a young man of, say, 9 years of age, if his father is a blacksmith, he will study with his father and learn the blacksmithing trade and become a blacksmith. And his name will be Smith, or those will say, "Where is John the Smith?" they will say. And soon people will call him John Smith. And John Smith might be the son's name after that, or John the son of the smith. But John, the young man, will always be a smith, and his son will be a smith, and his son after him, just as Robert the farmer will have his son also be a farmer. Unfortunately, as I have seen in your time here now, young men have opportunity to become whatever they want to be. I don't know if that's such a good thing. But in our time, you see, you're restricted to being what your father was, whether you like it or not. In school, no one went to school except those who had money.
No one can go to school now because you're married about the time you're 9 years old, or perhaps 13. Every woman should have at least 1 or 2 children by the time she's about 13, 14 years old. Most royal people are of course, married at an early age to make certain that this union will continue. So you might be married at 6 or 7 and never see your husband until you're, 14, 15, till you have to go to the castle. No, it's very important for everyone to have their duties, and children's duties are in the field. Working at home, sewing, helping mother, learning to cook. People don't live very long, you know.
How long do they live?
Oh, if you're 30 years old, you're quite old.
Oh, yes.
There is so much plague, there is so much disease. If you get a small cut on your hand, it gets infected, you can die from that. There is no such thing as medicines as you have today, your antibiotics, they call it. Oh, we didn't have such things. And if you don't take care of a little cut like that, well, you'll die. That's all there is to that. Most children died before they were 5 years old.
That's quite a tragedy, isn't it? So I imagine that they had to have quite a few children in order to make sure they had some to grow up.
And to have enough people to help them in the fields and at home, so that they could make enough monies to eat. All the lands belong to the king, and all the game upon it belong to the king.
What do you mean by game?
Oh, deer, rabbits, quail, fowl, all sorts of birds on the wing, or anything that runs about in the wood that is good to eat. It's all mine, including the fish in the streams. Now, it seems to me, I have seen people of your country here going out on a bridge at midday, or at eventime even, with a line, fishing in the water, catching fish and taking it home for them to eat, and not paying a penny to the king. Now, in my time, that was altogether illegal. Any man who went out and took a deer, or a rabbit, or a fox, or any sort of badger, whatever there was, or a fish, had to pay tribute to the king, or else his life could be forfeit. Robin Hood set a very bad example. That was what he was all about. He would go out and poaching game. And that is what it's called when you take game from the king's forest. Poaching. He was a poacher. A very good poacher, as poachers go. At poaching, that is. And at getting away.
I see. So you really have control over everything in your
yes.
land.
Oh, yes.
Everything.
Not only that, but Henry has decided to have laws so that people may only wear certain colors, so they know how much money to collect from them in taxes.
Tell me about that. What color do you wear if you have a lot of money?
Well, if you're royal, and only if you're of the royal family, you will be allowed to wear purple and ermine. And anyone who wears blue is in service to anyone else. So, for instance, servants
I think maids.
and people who are also hired to work for merchants who need people to work in their shops, who are learning the trade. They would wear blue. Of course, reds are very hard to keep because those colors just don't last very long in the sun. They fade out very easily. So if you're in the castle, you can wear a red. Many of our courtiers do wear reds and blacks and things like that. You'll notice that what I'm wearing today has different colors in it, but this was hand-painted by Michelangelo for my wedding when I did marry Henry.
Lovely.
Yes, just recently.
How long have you been married? Excuse me.
6 months. Only 6 months.
And 6 very happy months at that, I might add.
We shall be married all our days.
By God's grace, it shall be so.
Yes, indeed. I do carry his son. And there are those who have augured it. They have thrown the fires. They have looked at the entrails of doves, and they have all said that indeed it shall be a boy. Of course, those who have said that it shall not be a boy, well, they're no longer living. Henry's seen to that.
Yes, of course.
You have quite a bit of control over your entire nation. How do you keep yourself healthy?
Well, of course, by eating the best food that is available, by going out and exercising at good sport. It is a difficult thing being king. It is not an easy job, you see, or to be queen, if you will. You must do everything. You must decide on the taxes, decide an argument over which peasant shall keep a cow if there is some disagreement between them on it, on how taxes shall be raised or levied. And this is a very weighty problem. Heavy lies the head that bears the crown, so they say. And it is so. So as my head, nor any rest of me, shall get too heavy, I go out riding very often. Sometimes they will take 8 horses and put them across the countryside at those points where I like to ride the best. And I will set out just after noon, riding until the first horse wears out. Then off of that one onto another and back out riding again, full until sunset, until I have come a circuit round the city or back to the castle and worn out 8 horses, which the servants all bring back. Or perhaps an afternoon of tennis. I rather like tennis. It's a good game. And riding with my falcons out to go hunting, to release a bird and see it go and catch a pigeon from the air, or pluck a small coney, as you would call a rabbit, from a field, and bring it back to me. Good sport, this. And my favorite sport, of course, is picnicking. Yes,
Picnicking.
I invented picnicking.
I see.
As you may do even now, on
Yes,
a
we
Sunday
do.
afternoon.
Yes.
I invented that. You may thank me.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
I'm very interested in the falconry that you just mentioned because I want to know what kind of pets you might keep.
Oh.
Is the falcon a pet?
The falcon is both a pet and an occupation. More for sport than for petting. But we do have some birds. Anne has a very fine collection of birds, I think. Some she has taught to sing in a very special way.
Well, you see, we have merlins and we have falcons, which we used to hunt. We'll go out on horseback and take our little birds with us, and we set them out, and they will catch other birds, and they will catch small game for us. And then, of course, we have the dogs under the table, which eat all of our scraps and food that we don't want. Dogs in the castle are fine, but in the countryside they're very hard to be found. People are hungry and need something to eat.
They eat the dogs?
Of course.
Only the slow dogs.
I see.
Fast dogs make it to the castle.
Yes.
I see. Very good.
But he's referring to our little birds that we teach to sing. Now, I'll show you something very interesting. This is called a recorder. It is a particular instrument that I know that some people still play these nowadays.
They still do.
The reason it's called a recorder is because we have certain birds that we like to teach music to. We will play the piece of music, and then the bird will repeat it. we'll repeat the piece of music over and over and over and over again until finally the bird knows how to play it on its own voice. And once the bird knows